This is part 2 of lesson 5.2b. You will need page 24 to complete this portion of your notes. So for this portion, it says that you're going to solve problems that have no percent given. So you're going to use a model to solve these. So the first step is that the is the amount of the part, and the of would be the total value in your fraction. So you write is over of, which is the same as the part to total. Okay, so you make a fraction by writing the part to total as a ratio. Then you do a bar model. Then figure out how much each piece of the bar model represents based on the given information, and then solve. So for number 8, it says what percent, so we don't know what the percent is, that's what's missing, of 140 is 35. Notice how I'm circling these parts for a reason, and that's so that I know how to set up my ratio of is over of or part to total. So remember, you write the is over the of, or the part to whole or part to total. So the is would be 35 and the of would be 140. Okay, so we wrote that as a fraction. Now we want to simplify that fraction. Okay, so for this fraction, you can actually divide the numerator and denominator by 35, and you get 1 over 4. So that means we're going to break our bar model into 4 total parts. So take your bar model and break it into 4 parts. Okay. Of would be the total, and then your is the part. So the total value of your bar model is 140. Okay. And the total percentage value of this bar model would be 100%. So 140 would be 100% of the total. We want to figure out what percent would 35 be. So 35 is a fourth of our bar model. So that means we want to label a fourth of our bar model as 35. Okay. So we want to know what percentage 35 would be. So what percentage is that? Well, now you take, instead of 140, you take 100% and divide it by 4, and you get 25%. So that 35 is 25% of the total. Okay, so it means that 25% of 140 is 35. Okay, number 9, what percent of 120 is 48? So label your part to total ratio, which to figure out the part to total, look at what's the is and what's the of. So is 48, so that goes in the numerator, and then 120 is the of, so that goes in the denominator. So we want to reduce this fraction. So you can divide the numerator and denominator by 24 and you get 2/5. So you're going to break your bar model into 5 total parts. So sketch your bar model and break it into fifths. Okay, and the total numerical value of your bar model is 120. And if you're looking at 120, that would be 100% of the total. Okay, now 2 of these fifths, so 2 of these fifths are equal to 48. Okay, so what you want to do is figure out the value of each of those parts. So take 48 and divide it by 2, so that equals 24. So each of these are 24, and we want to know what percentage value that is. So what percent is that? So if the total percentage value of that bar model is 100%, take 100% and divide it by the 5 parts. That would be 20% each. So each part is 20%. So if we have 2 parts, both parts would be 40%. Okay, so 40% of 120 is 48. That would be 40%. Okay. Number 10, what percent of 80 is 60? So take the part to total ratio, which is the same thing as is over of. Is would be 60, and of would be 80. So if you reduce that, you can divide by 20, and you get 3/4. So that means you're going to break your bar model into 4 total parts. So sketch your bar model and break it into 4 parts. So the total percentage value of your bar model is 100%. Okay, and the total value is 80. We want to know what percentage 60 would be. So 60 is only 3/4 of your bar model. So those 3/4 equal 60. So that means to figure out the value of each part, we need to take 60 and divide it by 3, and that would be 20. So each of these parts equal 20. Okay, so we want to know what percentage that is. Okay, those 3 parts would be. So to figure out the value of that, take 100% and divide it by 4, and that would be 25%. So each of these has a 25% value. So you take 25% times 3, and that would be 75%. Okay, so that means that 75% of 80 is 60. Okay, number 11, what percent of 95 is 19? So take your is over of, which is the same thing as the part to total ratio. So it would be of is 95, is would be 19, so 19 goes in the numerator and 95 goes in the denominator. If you reduce that, you can divide the numerator and denominator by 19 and you get 1/5. So take your bar model and break it into fifths. Okay, And the total percentage value of your bar model is 100%. And the total value is 95. So we want to know what percentage value would one of these fifths be. So one of these fifths is 19. So 19 is 1/5 of your bar model. We want to know what percentage that is. So to figure out the percentage, you take 100% and divide it by 5. So that's 20%. So the percentage value of each of these parts is 20%. Okay, so that 1/5 would be 20% of the total. So 20% of 95 is 19. Okay, so you were looking for the percentage, which is 20%. So this concludes part 2 of lesson 5.2b.